Hi, my name is Liz Hiller with NACE. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Winning the ATS Game, Demystifying Application Response Rates in 2024. We encourage you to actively participate in the chat and please post your questions in the Q&A. It is my pleasure to introduce Nick Ebling, Senior Account Manager for Jobscan. Take it away, Nick.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining today. As we mentioned here, sorry, I'm going to pull up my notes. As we mentioned here, we're going to discuss demystifying the application and response rates and really identifying what applicant tracking systems are. So today with me, well, I'll introduce myself. I'm Nick. I'm the Senior Account Manager here with Jobscan, and I oversee the partnerships for all of our B2B partnerships, universities, nonprofits, outplacement firms, all job-seeking firms that we work with. Additionally is Isaac Taylor. Isaac oversees all of Jobscan's B2B sales as the head of B2B, and Grace Williamson, the Senior Director of Industry and Employer Relations at University of San Diego. Grace is our special guest here today. Alrighty, a quick overview of the agenda that we'll be discussing today. Next slide, please, Isaac. Thank you. We're going to talk about applicant tracking systems, just giving you all an overview of what an ATS is. This may be a repeat for some, but we feel it's always beneficial to kind of discuss it so we kind of know the topic that we're discussing here. Additionally, we're going to talk about strategic keyword optimizing, along with the results of optimizing resumes, LinkedIn's, and cover letters for job descriptions, different techniques and tools that we can suggest utilizing, and then we're going to open up the floor for a Q&A. Now, as Liz had mentioned, if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. If we are not speaking at the time, we will be addressing these questions. Additionally, we're going to take questions and address them live at the end too. So please feel free to filter them in there. Alrighty, so first and foremost, applicant tracking systems. Let's go ahead and jump to the next slide here. ATS is the acronym that we'll be using throughout this presentation. So applicant tracking systems, you can go back. Well, you can keep it here. Applicant tracking systems, these are systems that are put in place to help scale the job of a recruiter. I think that's the best way to describe them. When we talk about ATSs, I like to use an analogy here. So any Amazon posting to date will yield upwards of like 2,000 applicants a day. Now, that being said, as a recruiter, I'm not going to go through 2,000 different resumes to identify the best person, the person to, take on this job. Now, that being said, I'm going to take those resumes and I'm going to put them in a form of automation. For Amazon, I know that Amazon utilizes iCIMS. iCIMS will identify keywords that match the job description and then send me about 30 of those resumes for me to actually review as the recruiter, in which I pick, 5, 6, 7 of them to actually call for the interview. So the way that this job process or job application process has changed really is moving from becoming one of those 2,000, shifting over to one of the 30 that actually get in front of the recruiter, and then shifting into the 5 to 6 that actually get the call back. So here at Jobscan, we conduct market research on roughly 70 ATSs that are out on the market. And we're going to discuss first Fortune 500 companies. So as we can see here, 97.4% of Fortune 500 companies utilize applicant tracking systems. Each ATS is different. They have different qualifications, different specifications. We're going to do a deeper dive into that to kind of show you what that means today. The other piece of the pie here that we see doesn't necessarily mean that these companies are not utilizing ATSs. It means that they're using in-house systems that they've built themselves. So it can obviously be difficult for us to obtain market research on in-house systems. However, we know that tailoring a resume to a job description does improve the results of the applicant, whether there's an ATS in place or not, in-house or one of the larger ones. Let's go ahead and jump to the next slide here. So when it comes to distribution of Fortune 500 companies and the ATSs that they utilize, we see some heavy growth and changes from 2019 to 2023. We can see Workday is by far the most widely used ATS among Fortune 500 companies. Over 38% of companies on this list or within the Fortune 500 column here utilize Workday for talent acquisition. SuccessFactors is growing in popularity and now has 15.1% usage rate. So while there's a plethora of ATSs out on the market, when it comes to Fortune 500 companies, we see that about 53.6% of them utilize these two applicant tracking systems.
Do you want to speak as well to ATS usage outside of Fortune 500? So companies that aren't as large or even small businesses?
Great question there, Isaac. Why don't you go ahead and jump to the next slide? Yeah, so distribution for ATSs, companies big and small utilize applicant tracking systems. Yes, we can use them for recruiting, but they can also be utilized as HR tools or communication amongst not just internal employees, but candidates as well. So when it comes to general distribution of ATSs across all companies, we see Greenhouse and Lever as some of the largest ATSs that are utilized. They still, just like the others, have specifications and qualifications and that make them unique. However, Lever we utilize here at Jobscan. In 2021, we also utilized it, and we were a smaller company. We had about 30 employees overall, still utilizing an ATS to aid within our recruiting process because we get such a large influx of applicants. It helps for us to identify who's the most qualified candidate prior to actually reviewing the resume there. And let me go ahead and jump down to my next slide here, where I'm going to pass it back over to Isaac here. And Isaac, oh my goodness, sorry. So if we understand a little bit about ATSs and kind of like what they are, can we discuss a little bit about the how and why companies utilize them?
Yeah, and I'll just speak a little bit about, first of all, why companies are using ATS and why we're seeing such explosion of this technology in the last few years. So we're seeing it grow recently at around 10%. A couple years ago, it was growing at 6%. And we're predicting that it's going to grow even further than this going forward. And there's a couple of reasons why, right? I mean, it's just the job market that we're in right now with higher unemployment rate, more competition, and frankly, much higher application volume that companies need to contend with. So they need to be reviewed by somebody, whether it's person or technology. But now they're under financial pressure. You have lower investment from venture capital, some sales pressure depending on the company. So, when we're under financial pressure, recruiting is typically one of the first departments to be impacted by that. So you have the same amount of recruiters reviewing significantly more resumes. So either they need to address that by hiring more, which is difficult, or they need to scale out the job of their existing recruiters with technology, which is what we're seeing more and more often now. So I just want to pull up a quick example of, this is actually Jobscan roles that we have hired this year. So you can see application volume of different roles here, 500, 926, 662, and 539. And most of these job roles were open for less than a week. So I want to just compare that against 2022. So not too long ago, just 2 years, we saw less than 1/10 of the application volume for the exact same roles. So you see full stack engineer here, 37 applications compared to this year at 539. And we do not have more recruiters than we had at that time. So they now need to scale their job to review resumes using technology. So it's kind of an unnecessary evil at some point. So I want to talk a little bit about functionally, how do ATSs do this? So there's a couple different ways that they can filter candidates to make the job of the recruiter easier. So there's hard knockouts, which is really a binary decision, right? Do you have qualification or not? Could be user of experience, can be geographical location, can be salary band, or they don't even see a resume to begin with. Then you have more rudimentary filtering where they're looking at, okay, anybody 0 to 5 years of experience or have these specific skill sets within their resume. And then now we're seeing more and more advanced ATSs out there that have scoring or stack ranking, often with artificial intelligence of their own on their end, that highlights the most qualified candidates to the recruiter and essentially just puts them in an ordered list for them. So I'm going to show you just a couple examples of real ATSs that are out there. So this here is iCIMS, the system that's used by Amazon and a whole bunch of other companies. I think Boeing uses it as well, Toys R Us, Zellers, and you can see that here I'm opened up on a filtering screen. So, if I'm Amazon and I have 2,000 applicants for a role, I want to go look for all candidates here that have 3 to 5 years of experience, for example. And if you can see here, all of these candidates are showing up as 0 years of experience. That may not be because they actually have years of experience. It's because how the ATS is interpreting it. So there's ways that we can do things with our date formats to match the ATS and how it reads resumes. So we can avoid your candidates being filtered out for reasons that aren't legitimate. Then also things like keywords, tags, when it was last updated, etc. So yeah, it's picking out all of these elements from their resumes and giving the recruiters an interface to interact with that. This here is the system that's used by Oracle, Taleo. So you can see here it's applying a percentage match rate to each resume that comes through based on variables that they have set. Typically, that's going to be keywords coming from the job description and their hard requirements. So they're often going to order by score here and review the top percentile of candidates as determined by their ATS platform. So you want to be at the top of this list, ideally, with the highest percentage as far as they're concerned. Okay, and then I want to talk about once we get past the technology, keyword optimization is still extremely important. So I'm looking here at a heat map of recruiters' eyes hitting a resume when they're reviewing it. On the left-hand side, you can see this is a resume that has been reviewed for around 6 seconds, which we know is the typical average of a recruiter. We're seeing that go lower and lower throughout the years. It's now sometimes between 1 to 5 seconds. It's a skill set for a recruiter to learn, but they're getting better and better at it. On the right-hand side, you see a resume that's been reviewed for a couple minutes, a little bit longer, but we still see the same behavior where typically eyes are concentrated on the left-hand side of the resume and then move down sometimes towards the right here and concentrated towards the top. So if we want to stuff our resume with the most important information, that's where we want to focus on putting it ideally so that the recruiter, it catches their eye as they go down. So you can see here, this is just a wider sample set from 2 different recruiters across 7 different resumes. And they're all generally following that same pattern of starting at the top left, working down, occasionally darting towards the right. And then I also wanted to point out a couple examples from what we can learn with e-commerce research that's out there. And this has been solidified for years now and studied much more than resume review. And we can see the same behaviors happening, starting at the left, going down, right? So this is just about human behavior and how they interact with digital writing. It's not isolated to resumes. So yeah, it's something that we really need to pay attention to when we're reviewing our resumes and giving examples for students. Okay. So Nick, what kind of pitfalls are people not aware of when it comes to ATS and how candidates can put themselves in a more competitive position?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that we've kind of discussed already here is the importance of strategic keywords and structuring our resumes to match the job descriptions themselves. So what we just kind of went over there was the heat map of a recruiter actually viewing a resume. But that's kind of the second component when it comes to the application process. The first component here is getting through the ATS. So like I said, every ATS is different. They have different qualifications, different specifications. So let's identify a little bit about which ATS kind of ticks in which way. So if you could jump to the next slide here. This is data that is pulled directly from Jobscan. When I run a job description against a resume for a certain company, as you can see here, I'm looking into SpaceX and Oracle. You'll see that in the parentheses below. So Greenhouse, you've added this company name, SpaceX. We've been able to identify which ATS is being utilized. So when it comes to specifications on Greenhouse specifically, this is set aside from the other 70 ATSs that we conduct market research on. We can see here that Greenhouse only accepts 2 sorts of file types, .docx or PDF. So in other words, if I'm an individual who's applying for one of these positions and I'm applying without this file format, there's a chance that my resume will not even get through the ATS. I'm never going to know that though. I'm going to receive an email that says we decided to look in another direction when my resume wasn't scanned through the ATS. It didn't get in front of the recruiter. I may have the right education and right experience, but I'm not filtering through. When it comes to Taleo here, what's the job? Oracle. Oracle is the position that I'm aiming for. It looks like Taleo only recognizes exact abbreviations, or sorry, it doesn't recognize common abbreviations or acronyms. So in other words, if I'm a candidate that's applying to one of these positions, I actually want to spell out my acronyms to stand the strongest chance. Utilizing terms like certified public accountant in addition to my acronym can greatly increase my chances of actually passing through that ATS and getting in front of the recruiter. One of the most common things that we see or issues with applicant tracking systems is keyword identifying. So in other words, ATSs are not able to identify different roots or stems of terminology or different tenses of hard and soft skills. Like, let's say I have a past in sports marketing and I'm aiming for a role as a sports marketer. Marketing, marketer, these are essentially synonyms, but we can identify through the feedback that we've just gotten here that these ATSs are not going to be able to understand the differences there. So for me, as a job seeker, what I want to do is actually tailor my resume to match the tenses of terminology. And again, not all ATSs do this, but I chose these two because they're very popular and they do have issues with terminology stemming. So what I want to do is match the exact terminology that's written in the job description. So changing my title or my background from sports marketing to sports marketer. That way I can stand the strongest chance of passing through. One of my favorite success stories that I've heard here at Jobscan stems from a student at University of Houston. I will actually pull the article and I'll put it in the chat here, but there's a student that had a very niche degree within aerospace finance, something like that. They had an internship with Boeing and he was working with his career coach at the University of Houston so that he could apply to NASA and essentially be a shoo-in for an internship program right after graduation. Well, after he graduated, he started applying and couldn't get a call back. He had the right education and right experience, but didn't understand why he wasn't getting the call back. So working with his career coach and being introduced to Jobscan, he was able to tailor his resume, which I think he came in initially at like a 36%, tailored it again because he had the right experience, right education, was just missing a few plurals or different tenses of terminology on the end of each hard or soft skill, was able to increase that to an 86%. After applying, he got the call back for the interview the same day. He did end up getting the job. I don't have statistics on how quickly he got the job, but he was able to actually get that job nearly immediately after. So when it comes to tailoring or optimizing resumes, Jobscan is not the only tool out there. Granted, I'm biased and I will, yes?
This is Grace. Hi.
Oh, yeah.
Before you move forward, I was hoping that I could add a comment here. I'm certain that many of the people on this call offer lifelong career services to their alumni. And I have a similar example that I can offer as a success story. So just last week, I was meeting with an alumna who'd been applying for tons of different opportunities. She'd been in a role for 20 years with one employer, but had to move away from her position and resign because her husband got a job opportunity in another state. And what she found was even though she'd been with this employer for 20 years and had all of this experience, she was not getting callbacks for interviews. And, she'd had a remarkable career and couldn't understand why. And when I sat down with her and looked at her resume and introduced her to Jobscan, it completely changed everything for her because she was in an HR background. And 20 years ago, part of her responsibility was running orientations, and throughout her career. Now orientations are called onboarding. And so there were keywords. That's just one example where, by simply using verbiage or wording that is no longer used now, she wasn't coming up as a match for different positions simply based on word choice. And she was sharing job descriptions with me where she said, I meet the qualifications of this when it comes to degree, years of experience, yet it was simply by changing the language that we were able to improve her outcomes. So as an example, we took a job posting that she'd already applied for with the resume that she presented, and she came up as a low match rate within Jobscan. By applying all of the suggested hard skills and soft skills and utilizing Jobscan as a career thesaurus, she was able to come up to a match rate of 80% within 45 minutes. So remarkable progress.
It is remarkable.
Want to offer that out.
I think so. Yes, I love that, Grace. Thank you. And I do want to say that while I'm biased, and I will say that, yes, Jobscan is the #1 tool out there, there are tons of tools out there that can aid within the optimization process. If you could jump to the next screen here, Isaac. So just to drop a few, Jobscan Premium, of course, for all of our university partners, it is a completely unlimited platform in which your students can run as many job descriptions and build as many resumes as they please, along with cover letters and LinkedIn. We also offer a free version. So for career coaches or students that are not utilizing Jobscan Premium, they can sign up for Jobscan, what we call a free version, and they can run 2 job descriptions a month. We'll provide them with feedback on what their resume is missing and those tenses of terminology that are called out in the job description, which Sarah at Wichita, I see your question. I'm going to address that right here at the end. So in order for them to kind of strengthen their resume and strengthen their overall application. In addition to that, ChatGPT and ChatGPT Premium are great tools. We can enter in prompts that discuss, all right, this is the resume I have. This is the job description I'm going for. What terminology am I missing? What ATS is being utilized? What are the specifications behind it? ChatGPT also has a Jobscan plugin. If you just type in on a Google URL, ChatGPT Jobscan, you'll be able to identify or see that plugin tool and utilize that to actually build on resumes. Additionally, some great other tools that are out there are Optimal Resume, Skill Syncer, and Skills First, all of which will help tailor resumes or cater to the job experience, job application experience, and modify resumes so that you can get through the ATS. Like I said, this is like the first step within the application process itself prior to actually getting in front of the interview. So Grace, I have another question for you. As someone who works daily with students and other job seekers, how are applicant tracking systems affecting these students' job searches? Oh, Grace, you're on mute.
So applicant tracking systems are absolutely affecting students' job searches in that students need to gain an understanding, which is our job as career coaches and practitioners, to ensure that they understand how important individualizing each resume for the jobs for which they're applying with the appropriate keywords and match soft and hard skills. As students are applying for roles, they can't just take one resume and apply to all of the roles that they may find for an internship or a full-time job. What we found is that by employing Jobscan, students are able, first of all, to have actionable feedback 24/7, which is amazing because as much as we'd love to be there for our students all day, we can't possibly be. But I know when it comes to student athletes or maybe students studying abroad, having a career coach by simply opening Jobscan, they're with them to guide them through the applicant tracking system process and the updates that they need to make to their resume or LinkedIn profile is extremely impactful. So when a student, uploads, oftentimes students have no awareness until we teach them about Jobscan and applicant tracking system of how experience, keyword choice, and those soft and hard skills, how much they matter. And so I know that with our student population, as an example, I have international students who earn degree from our university as well as their home university. But part of the requirement is that they have an internship here in the United States. And the first year that I ran the program without Jobscan, students have from the time they arrive on campus in September with the deadline of the first week of May to find an internship opportunity. And this is a degree requirement. If they don't have an internship opportunity, they will not earn the second degree. And what ended up happening was in the first year, we were able to get students jobs, but we were really running until the very last day to get these students positions and offer letters. When we utilized Jobscan this year, which is the second year that we ran the program, the majority of the students had job offers already midway through the year, but every single student had an opportunity in hand a month earlier than the year previous, simply by using Jobscan, and also recognize that English is not the first language of these students. So not only are they becoming, acclimated to American culture and to language proficiency, Jobscan was a huge help with these students who didn't speak English as a second language or as their first language for other people on this call. So I'll say, the earlier adoption of this tool, the faster timeline to a greater number of interviews, which is one thing that we've seen, and also, faster placement rate when it comes to actually being able to secure an opportunity.
Grace, I just want to ask a follow-up question there, because I'm sure there's tons of coaches on this call here who do not have access to Jobscan, and nor do their students, right? So what would you recommend for people to do with their students in those situations?
So in those situations, I will say that we use ChatGPT along with Jobscan when we're teaching students how to use the tool. So the thing about Jobscan that makes it wonderful is that it saves all of the data and information when your students are looking for jobs with the resume they applied for and the job posting. But if you're trying to identify keywords and skills, you can absolutely run those jobs through ChatGPT and ask it to identify keywords or hard and soft skills. And But I will say that it's much more time consuming. You don't get the immediate job match that you would get in Jobscan. So for those of you that may not be aware, when you utilize Jobscan, you upload the student's resume, and then the student will upload the job posting that they're targeting, and it will immediately extract those keywords, hard skills, and soft skills, and tell students how closely they're matched to that opportunity with a percentage based on the information that it gathers. When you're using ChatGPT, you're still able to filter out much of the same information, but students don't have that guide that tells them whether or not they're adding, the right skill set to their resume, or if they remove something, if that's detracting from their candidacy. But we do utilize ChatGPT, can absolutely be utilized for that purpose. In conjunction with Jobscan, oftentimes we're also recommending that if students have not included a key skill set or keyword within their resume, that they can utilize ChatGPT to help them write that bullet that's reflective of their experience, and to include, percentages or tailored information that reflects their work experience and skill set. Does that answer what you were asking?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
But it's a much longer process. That's the one thing. Jobscan, when we're talking about the time frame and immediacy of the actionable guidance that's provided, every single time a student is making changes and then rescanning with the changes they've made to their resume, it's within a matter of 10 seconds that they're being told how much their resume has improved since their previous scan.
And don't worry, stick around, everybody. We'll show you what Jobscan is all about live afterwards here as well.
And the questions too. Grace, in the beginning here, you talked about students kind of going out with a base resume and applying to hundreds of different jobs upon graduation. Let me tell you firsthand, I know that game. It's exactly what I did. Even walking into a brick and mortar with, a physical copy of my resume, I was immediately told to apply online because they only consider online applications. So I wish I had known about tools like this. I did exactly that. I think I was averaging about 200 applications a week. I finally got a job. It was the only job that I got a call back for. Despite these being kind of entry-level roles, looking for graduates, I had the right education, a little bit of the right experience, but I couldn't get a call back from anyone. Had I known about tailoring resumes prior, then I would have spent a little bit more time on each application. So suggested tools here. Let's go ahead and jump down where we're going to talk a little bit about results. So results from tailoring resumes, LinkedIn's, and cover letters to each job description. So the results are impactful. I mean, statistically, as we can see here, these are market research that we conduct here at Jobscan and the results that we see from our users. But optimizing a resume to a job description can lead to higher response rates, shorter time actually job seeking, increased confidence, more opportunities, and more interviews. Taking the time to optimize a resume to a job description can lead upwards to 3 times the amount of interviews, whether there's an ATS in place or not. Additionally, it can cut the job search in half. So again, as opposed to sending out 200 applications a week, we take the time to optimize it. We're going to see more opportunities and more interviews, which of course is going to shorten the overall length of time that it takes for us to get a job. So the results are impactful. Grace, I have another question for you here.
Sure.
Have you seen a direct impact of automation within university space in aiding in the job seeking process amongst your students?
Absolutely. I think students oftentimes are utilizing ChatGPT in a number of different ways. When it comes to early adoption, I think also, as many of you are on this call are likely aware, the early adoption rate among college students for automation tools is high. And what we're trying to teach students is that by adopting these tools, it gives you more time to be able to focus, particularly when we're talking about whether it's Jobscan or ChatGPT within job search. For example, paired with Jobscan will suggest that, once students reach that match rate of 75% or higher on their resume, that they can then, to prepare for their interview, cut and paste the job posting along with their resume to find, what interview questions they may be asked and what areas of weakness they may have to, provide examples for or draw from. And so, the students are, their adoption rate is swift. I think in utilizing Jobscan at a couple of different universities where, my student populations have ranged in size from 1,600 to 45,000. It doesn't matter the size of your career coaching team. There are always some people that are concerned, or some coaches that are concerned that, the lack of personalization that an automation tool has is going to detract from what they're able to offer the student. And I will tell you what I have found time and time again is that advisors are able, or career coaches or career counselors, whatever you call them at your institution, are able to utilize automation tools to, I guess, to back up the data and the research that they're already sharing with students. So if they're telling students, you need to tailor your resume, Jobscan is, supporting that. In addition, what we found is that rather, a lot of appointment times across the board are taken up by resume reviews or LinkedIn optimization programming. And what we found is that students that utilize Jobscan prior to a career advising appointment, it really frees up part of that appointment to be able to concentrate on things like, your strategic job search for that student and helping them look for an internship, or, providing feedback on interviewing and being able to jump to, the next stage of preparation instead of spending so much time on simply looking at resumes and spending that hour with the student only on resume writing or how they can improve their resume. And particularly at one institution that I was at where we were using it with 40,000 students, when we adopted Jobscan, that provided more time for us to be able to support student organizations, for us to be able to spend time doing more innovative programming, both in person and online, and for us to be able to support students in pursuing programs like the Truman Scholarship or White House Fellowship Program. So, that's another thing to look for students, or to look at when considering the number and types of appointments students are seeing your career services office for, and whether or not they could benefit from Jobscan and your office could benefit to be able to work on, other organizational goals, or to have more time to put towards them if you're able to streamline efficiency in the amount of time that you're spending on resume reviews.
I want to address a question here. It is from an anonymous, but I think it's a really good one that kind of correlates to this impact here. It says, Nick, when you were a student, did you engage with your career center on campus? I am just curious, since you mentioned that you were applying to hundreds of roles and only got one call. So it's a great question. And I know that I'm going to get the shame here, but no, I did not utilize my university's career services. And honestly, that's on me. Had I done it, I probably would have learned about the optimization process, because I know that my university, Western Washington University, has tons of different resume tools for current students. But implementing a tool like Jobscan or any of these sort of automations, yes, during the undergraduate side or graduate side, it's the idea of teaching the lesson of like, this is what an ATS is. This is why you're not getting a call back. I'm so grateful that my university did offer alumni services as well, with access to these sorts of automations. I believe that my school utilized Skills First, which helped me kind of understand the optimization process. And they also offered Handshake to alumni, which provided specific positions that were looking to hire Western Washington University alumni. So I'm glad that those resources were available to me as an alumni. I just wish I had started that on my, like, right after graduation and not during my second job hunt.
Nick, this is Grace again. I also wanted to say that when I was working at the university where we utilized Jobscan with 40,000 students, obviously with our, career coaching team of 10, we were not able to meet with every single student, excuse me. And many of them were, adult learners, meaning that they had, at least 3 to 5 years of work experience already. And I will say that we saw, when we implemented Jobscan, we saw a huge percentage of our students pursuing everything from associates through doctoral degrees, coming in and utilizing Jobscan without ever making an appointment with our office. But, we were able to go in and see their success rates, see that they were getting interviews in Jobscan, see that, they were getting callbacks, and that was so encouraging. And I just wanted to say that again, because knowing the scale or understanding that from the chat, seeing the large scale and difference, of people that are on the call, that whether you're a large university or a small university, having Jobscan implemented in the way that you integrate it, just to explain this, how is it possible that you could have Jobscan, how do students get the invitation if they never see you? That's because we invite students at the beginning of the year and all they have to do is activate the invitation. So if they would have read a newsletter and see that Jobscan is offered, or that we're having, seen that we're advertising a Jobscan workshop or webinar, they may never see us, but they would have remembered perhaps a couple of times a year that they receive an invitation to activate their account. So.
Love that. So I think we have a good grasp now on what an ATS is and what tools are available to kind of cater towards the optimization process. And now I want to pass it back over to Isaac, who's going to talk a little bit about JobScan specifically and how we can tailor our resumes to each job description.
Yeah, so I will pull up a live example here. Bear with me. Okay, so I am in Jobscan at the moment. So what we're looking at right here is a student's resume. So let's say this is an alum who's graduated from business school and they're looking to apply for a role here at Amazon. So I've already uploaded my resume, which Jobscan is analyzing and then scoring here at the top left against this specific job description. So it's reading through the job description and picking out all of the important keywords, skills, hard responsibilities, soft skills as well, and then predicting how Amazon's system is going to then treat that resume. So just go back here, and then I'm going to look and see what ATS Amazon is using. So we say that they're using iSIMS, which happens to be one of the more trickier ATSs to pass because despite Amazon being a high-tech company, their ATS isn't particularly high-tech. So it doesn't treat keywords very intelligently. For example, the word stemming that we talked about earlier in the call. If you have a skill set, let's say collaboration, but they are looking for collaborating inside the job description, it's not going to recognize that skill set. Which means that, if we know the downfalls of the systems that we're applying through, we can actually exploit those downfalls and use them to our advantage to put ourselves in a more competitive position in front of other candidates who are applying for that same role. So if I look here, hard skills, now this person actually has a pretty good resume that is relevant for the role, but the system that's reading it doesn't think it is because we're not using the exact terminology that they're looking for. So I'm opening up hard skills here, and I can see that there's 12 that we've picked out from the job description, which at the moment I have none of. If we go here and add, marketing to my hard skills section, B2B, supply chain, I want to generate a bullet point that includes enterprise sales. It'll give me some examples to jump off from, so I can add that underneath a role. And as we make changes, it's going to constantly rescore this resume here. So we started out under 30, and now we're up to 30, 40 here just by adding a couple tweaks. So that'll adjust up or down based on the changes that you're making. So you can know, is this what I'm doing right now actually making a difference in a positive way, or is it making it worse? And then it's also analyzing things that a recruiter or a human eye is going to see once they actually get to the resume as well. For example, it's highlighting a summary statement here that's a little bit too long. If we're going to include one, it needs to be concise and relevant to the role. So we can quickly rephrase this. There we go. So it's not going to change the score here because it's not impacting the ATS, but it's making it more easy to read for that recruiter who's getting into it afterwards. So it's also going to cover soft skills as well. So their job is to work down this list and add these little small tweaks that make a massive difference when it comes to your response rate. Just to give a quick example here, most of your students probably start off somewhere between 10 to 30% when they first upload their resume. And it matches up with the wider data that we have on how many resumes actually get read by a human when we submit it online. Ends up being around 25%. So, if your starting averages look like around 25%, that's about right. But if we can go from, let's say 20 to 40 here, now we've doubled the amount of callbacks that they're getting for each application they put out, which is worth it if we just spent, we've spent 2 minutes there doing that. That time is very well spent if we're going to get double the callbacks. But we can get even further than that if we go from 30 to 75, right? That's a significant impact. Grace, do you want to speak to a little bit about how your students engage with this match rate here?
Yes. So initially, oftentimes when students upload their resume, and I do want to speak to a couple of different points. I saw in the questions that some people were asking, like if we don't have Jobscan, how are we able to utilize and advise our students on keywords? And I will lead back to your question. One of the things that I would like to say is that before we became Jobscan clients, one of the things that we utilized was the free scans that are offered, but the applicant tracking system friendly resume templates. That's a wonderful first step for your students to take to be able to ensure that their resume is in the appropriate format so it can be read by the most popular applicant tracking systems. That in itself is the first step to not having your student resumes kicked out. So I would take a look at that. The other thing is Jobscan has a very vibrant library, robust library of resources and trainings. And I'm sure Nick and Isaac can speak more about that later. But I say that because when we look at this match rate, when we talk about the first time a student goes into the system and they're uploading their resume, oftentimes it hasn't been put into one of those ATS friendly applicant tracking system resume templates yet. And so they're often going to get a low match rate. And it may be because maybe they put their dates on the left instead of the right. Or if we have an international student, they may have a photograph on their resume. There are a number of different reasons why their match rate may be lower. But so that's the one thing that I would recommend first. And then with the low match rate, the question that was being asked is how are students utilizing that match rate? Is that correct? Okay. So when they have the low match rate at that point in time, they can go and look at the report, and what the report will tell them are the hard and soft skill keywords that they need to add in their resume. And in meeting with so many students, oftentimes they'll forget that they had a skill set, or they read the job post and like, yeah, I do that all the time, but they just didn't include it in their resume. And so including those hard skills and soft skills throughout their resume that highlight the experiences that they've had will improve that match rate. And so, the second from the time that they, put their resume from a non-applicant tracking system format to an applicant tracking system format approved resume and they upload it, they usually will come up higher than the low match rate. And then from the low match rate forward, as they integrate more of the keywords and skills, they'll see that number continue to go up. I will tell you that I have had students who are applying for jobs with startups or organizations that have unique language that they use to describe the work that they do, or the workers that it would be impossible for anyone to say that they've had that experience elsewhere, because that's just not language that's ordinarily used in a job posting. So when I tell those students in those situations where, if you started at a low match rate and after including all of the keywords, you're at a 60%, understand that your resume is now 60% better than it was before, right? And I have had students get interviewed at 45% and 60% for, those situations where there's been unique language, and actually get offered internships and jobs. And so while, we hope that our students will achieve that 75% match rate, we've also seen that sometimes, because of their skill set, that's not possible. And, we still want to encourage them to utilize this match rate to match at the highest rate possible, understanding that, that percentage rate is whatever times greater than what they began at.
It's a great way to put it there. Absolutely. Yeah, our end goal here isn't to achieve a very specific score. That it's not mandatory to hit 75%, like Grace said here. Our efforts are to meaningfully increase our probability of receiving a callback and achieving visibility with that recruiter as much as possible. Yeah, and we also do cover letters as well. So cover letters, not a lot of people realize this, but in ATS, if you do submit a cover letter, also reads through it and judges whether or not you have hard and soft skills. So it'll either analyze an existing cover letter and give you suggestions. For example, we're looking at a keyword suggestion replacement here, influencing. It's actually looking for influence, but we can also rewrite a cover letter from scratch here using AI, which reads their resume. So it takes the context of their experience, picks out specific examples that are going to be relevant for this job, and tailors it to that job description we provided. So you can see an example here. So this is meant to be just a simple way to utilize AI without necessarily knowing a lot about it. Because if you're going to use ChatGPT, for example, you have to learn how to prompt and refine versus Jobscan just doing this at a click for you here. But this again, AI always needs to be customized after you produce an example. So we want to encourage a student to read through this, make sure it represents them and it's accurate. And then the last piece I'll touch on is LinkedIn optimization. So it's going to give you a similar score to your resume. We're seeing LinkedIn just explode when it comes to recruiting behavior. Oftentimes, recruiters are looking at LinkedIn profiles first before the resume. I know myself as a hiring manager, that's the technique that I take. I look at LinkedIn, then I look at the resume afterwards. I just find it an easier format to read for myself. So you also want to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is optimized for the roles you're interested in. Yeah, there's videos online of that. I won't go into it today just for sake of time, but you want to take a few different job descriptions, pick out commonalities between hard requirements, soft skills, etc., and make sure that's included in your LinkedIn profile so you appeal to that industry for when a recruiter looks at it. Okay, so I know we have 15 minutes left here, so maybe we should go to a Q&A.
There's so many questions. And for those that I've answered already, I'm sorry, but there's no spell check on the Zoom chat. So please disregard my many spelling and grammatical errors in here. I'm just trying to get to them all. Okay. For some of these that I've answered already. So if you want to find a few in there, Isaac, that'd be great.
Yeah, here's the first one here. I know we addressed this a little bit during the presentation, but we know ATS is very common in large firms and organizations. Is there data to suggest that they're making their way to small organizations as well, like nonprofits and other small orgs?
Sarah from Wichita asked this a while ago, so I apologize. She asked, so do you not want to use tenses that match when they had the experience, i.e. past experience doesn't mean that you use past tense? I know that this sounds crazy, but it's all about getting through the automation. So while it may read like you are currently, providing that skill set within your current experience, and that may not be the case, it's still tailoring that terminology so that you get through the ATS. This is about getting through that first component within the application process and then getting in front of the recruiter. So yes, in some cases, that is exactly what an ATS is looking for.
And going back to the question that had been that Isaac had brought forward about whether or not nonprofits or smaller businesses are using applicant tracking systems. They may not be using applicant tracking systems, but every employer is looking for a candidate that has the knowledge, skills, abilities, and experience that they're looking for. So even if they are not using an applicant tracking system, utilizing Jobscan to be able to match or tailor your experience to what the recruiter is looking for is also going to be helpful. And for those universities that aren't able to utilize Jobscan beyond the free scans, I want to offer out again that, ChatGPT does offer that functionality. It's just in a slightly different way. And you can, well, I'm sure I don't need to give a primer on ChatGPT to all of you with prompts, but by asking the right prompt, you can also produce a similar result. And
Yeah.
I answer that specifically for the person that asked for nonprofits, because nonprofits are going to be least likely, at least on their smaller scale, to be utilizing an applicant tracking system.
Yeah, and we do have some data suggest usage rate among small businesses. Now it's about 50%. So there are some that don't, there are some that do, but that was about 30% a few years ago. So it is growing very much in the small business space. That's, well, most Fortune 500s have been using it for a decade now, but where the new growth is coming from is in the smaller business side.
Got another question here from Jennifer Kumar. Jennifer, I'm sorry, I don't see your university in here. Again, it's Zoom chat. So she asks, do ATSs read all formatted resumes accurately? We tend to suggest not to use tables or text boxes as ATSs may not read it properly. What I'm going to put in the chat here is what we call Jobscan's guide to ATS friendly resume templates. So yes, we do provide feedback on non-ATS friendly resumes. We also allow students to upload current resumes or start from scratch to build out ATS friendly templates that are insured and guaranteed to get through an applicant tracking system. We will provide feedback on non-ATS friendly resumes that, contain things like photos, graphs, headers, footers, addresses with street address or house numbers and street addresses, things that can create biases or are not read through ATSs. So I think the way that you're going about it is ideal, to not suggest tables, because that is one of the number one things that struggle along with photos. But there is a full guide there to kind of walk you through what is an ATS friendly template. Okay. They just keep coming in.
Let me address one here that some on the call probably are wondering as well, from Roberta Ruckberg. How many users at each institution can use Jobscan with a premium educational account, and what are the costs? So yeah, you buy Jobscan as a tool and you're given a certain allotment of students depending on how much you need. And costs are just determined on how many students are going to use the platform. So it's typically going to be $1 to $24, depending on how many students you have using the platform. So you can think of a small school is probably going to be around $5,000 per year. And then a very large school is going to be around 50,000. So yeah, it ranges between there, and anybody in the call, we're happy to work out a plan with you if you'd like to chat with us.
Isaac, did you address Linda McHugh here? Does listing keywords at the bottom of a resume get through an ATS?
It does help, yes. But we want to pay attention to also what the recruiter is going to read once they look at the resume. So if you recall the heat map that we looked at, generally they're looking in an F pattern, right? So if possible, we want to make sure that keywords are concentrated within that pattern where they're most likely to be looking with their eyes. But if you want to have a hard skills section at the bottom as well, it's another way for you to pack keywords in there in an easy way that doesn't compromise the readability of your resume. That still is going to work with the technology itself. So it doesn't really matter where the keywords are when it comes to the technology, but it does matter where the keywords are when it comes to a human reading it. So we want to pay attention to both.
And Linda, I can tell you from experience, so on my team, we provide customized training sessions for all of our university partners, where our team will actually come in and discuss with a pool of students or whatever it may be, not just how to utilize Jobscan, but we talk about applicant tracking systems in today's job market. One of the most common questions that we get is, can I just take all those hard skills and put it in white font at the bottom of my resume? Yeah, I guess you could, is typically the response that we give, but in a majority of ATSs, including Lever that we use here, we can see the full resume and how it came through. And then at the top, there's a button to press parse, which will take everything, shift it over to the left side, and highlight it all within black text. So we can see if you're pooling together all that terminology at the bottom that's relative to that role. And again, if I'm talking about sports marketing experience, or I have that mentioned a bunch of times in a hard skill or core skill setting, without actually expanding on it in my work experience, I'm confident that that being one of the number one hard skills for a sports marketing role is going to come up within the actual interview. And my inability to talk about it and my experiences there is definitely going to hinder my overall results. So you can get through the ATS in that function, but a recruiter can oftentimes spot that. So we typically deter students from doing that.
Yeah. Okay, I'll read out another one here. Are there tools in Jobscan or elsewhere that will tell you which ATS a company is using to help you generate a cover letter that will get you past that specific ATS? And yes, so I mean, there's some publicly available information, but it is a little bit scant. However, when you scan a job description in Jobscan, we're able to look at data from their job board, recruiter surveys that we've done against a huge database to identify, okay, well, Amazon's using iSIMS, Oracle's using Taleo, Nike's using Taleo, and then match our tailoring technique to what that ATS is looking for, and particularly exploiting their weaknesses. There are other tools out there that generalize ATS best practices, and nowadays ATSs are so different from one another. So in our opinion, it's not good enough. It's better than doing nothing, but you really are losing out on a ton of competitive advantages that you could be getting if you knew what you were applying through.
Another question here. Are cover letters reviewed by ATSs in the same way? Sorry if we already addressed this. I can do this quick. Yes, they are. Cover letters will go through an applicant tracking system. It's a great place for our job seekers to add in more terminology that they may be missing or want to expand on further that it correlates to the position. However, they will not carry as much weight as the resume itself. Statistically, I'm not sure what the percentage of like weight through there is, but I know that like within a system like Jobscan, a hard skill, if it changes it by like 2%, a soft skill may be like 0.5 or 1%. Same direction or correlation with the resume to cover letter. The cover letter is going to carry a lot more weight when going through an ATS.
Yeah. Here's a good question that some others might be thinking about as well. Are there concerns that only those who are good at optimizing and tailoring their documents are getting through the system as opposed to candidates who would be the best fit for the position? And that's a tough question that has ethical implications and everything else. But we're kind of at the point in the job market right now where we know qualified candidates are being filtered out no matter what. So you want to be one of the candidates that has that competitive advantage where, the job here is just to land an interview. Of course, you have to be a competent person and actually have the job experience and ability to describe yourself for that role within the interview to be selected as the best candidate. The intent of this is just to give you a shot to take a swing at it, right? And that's all a lot of candidates are looking for, is give me a chance.
Another great question here. How much is this service for a small college? Here at Jobscan, we partner with university of all sizes. We've got nonprofit partners that are just 2 career coaches, and we've got university and outplacement firms that have over 100 of coaches. Wow, over 100 coaches each. That being said, if you're interested in pricing or understanding this tool, I'm going to put in our university landing page here into the chat. It'll be addressed to everyone. We also, Isaac, if you want to jump to the next slide, are very open to connecting with you. So here you can see our LinkedIn URLs or QR codes, they're called QR codes. If you want to link with us, we're very open to chatting. We're including Grace on here too, and her experiences with Jobscan and the University of San Diego students and her long collegiate career. Very open to chatting. So if you have more questions, and I'm sorry, there's like 70 questions in here. I know I'm not going to be able to do them in 3 minutes, so please feel
Let's
free to
take
reach
one
out.
more here, a couple more.
Yeah,
So
go for it.
I've got one here actually for Grace, and I think this is something that you probably have experience and thoughts with. How are you balancing the benefits of something like Jobscan with a student's need to both learn how to write and also speak about their experience in an interview, considering that now they're using AI to help rewrite their bullets?
Okay, so I will say that, my goal, and I imagine the goal of many of the people on this call, is to provide our students with the resources and tools that they need in order to achieve their career goals. In utilizing Jobscan, that's one part of it. That, what we're trying to utilize this tool for is to help students understand the mastery or to master, what they need to do to have a well-written resume as well as cover letter, and for us as well, LinkedIn profile. It doesn't take away from the fact that now we still need to spend time on all of these other areas, on preparing them for interviews, preparing them for how to highlight and talk about the experiences that they've had. What utilizing, whether it's another automation tool or Jobscan does, is it provides us with more time and flexibility to be able to do that. So where, we were spending more time on, providing more individualized care end to end, it provides us with more time to spend with those students that need that level of individualized care on their resume, because there will still be some, but it also gives us more time to be able to spend with students when it comes to all of the other preparation they need to be able to be successful within, their career development, and whether it's internship or job search process.
Thank you, Grace. Do you have another question lined up, Nick?
No, I'm overwhelmed. So many. I gotta thank you, Nick, though, in there. Appreciate that.
This is an interesting one. Will an ATS successfully scan resumes with separate left and right columns? What format is most accepted by an ATS? And this is something that's actually evolved in the last couple of years. Columns traditionally were not read by ATS. And now almost every single major ATS on the market will read 2-column resumes, left and right. What they will not read is resumes with 3 or more columns still. So, that's the best practice that you can make with your students, that 2-column resumes, they are okay. 3-column or more resumes, absolutely not. And tables, ATSs still struggle with those as well.
2 or less is best.
Okay.
Alrighty. With that, we are at time. I see a lot of questions about the recording and the slides themselves. This will all be available to you. In fact, Liz, do we know how it's going to be distributed?
Yes. So my goal is to get it in there today, but it'll definitely be in there by Monday. So you'll go into your MyNace account, you'll have access to the recording, the slide deck, and there'll also be a copy of the chat. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. And like I said, please don't hesitate to reach out. If you have questions, it may take me a day to fill them all out, but thank you so much for joining. Everyone, have a great end of the week and a wonderful weekend. Take care, y'all.
thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.